Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Number 2, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Half that work week officially in the rearview mirror. We're working towards the weekend, and it's a big one here in South Louisiana. LSU and Alabama. 6:30 Saturday night in Death Valley. Feels like an elimination game for a pair of two-loss football teams. Tony Tsoukalas covers Alabama. He's a managing editor for Tide Illustrated, part of the Rivals Network. Good enough to give us a little bit of time on the Jim's Firearms Hotline as we crank up hour number 2. Tony, thanks for the time. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well.
Glad to hear it. Give me a vibe check on the fan base in Tuscaloosa. Year one post-Saban, year one of the new head coach there, Kalen DeBoer. A couple early losses. How are things feeling in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, well, I mean, this fan base is not used to having 2 losses early, so they're not super happy with that, as you can imagine. I think it's kind of I think the real vibe check will be after this game, because I think it's either going to it's going to skyrocket one way or the other. I think people are going to just hop right back on the bandwagon for Alabama if they can find a way to beat LSU. And then, the world will end if Alabama loses 3 games in the first week of November. So, I think it's just kind of we'll have to kind of wait and see. There's a lot of uncertainty around here. As you would imagine with Nick Saban out of the picture.
Why does Alabama have 2 early losses?
Yeah, I mean, look, the game against Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's a good team. You're on the road. I think a lot of people, I kind of, penciled that one in as a potential loss. The real unexplainable one is the Vanderbilt game. And look, I know Vanderbilt's a different team this year. It's a better team than it has been, but I still can't believe that an Alabama team lost to Vanderbilt. It's really been the third down defense for Alabama. I think it's been really tough. They've allowed their opponent to. In the first half of the Tennessee game, they were able to kind of keep Tennessee off the field, but in that second half, they let the balls kind of stay on the field and wear down the defense. And then against Vanderbilt, I mean, it seemed like Vanderbilt completed every single third down conversion it had. And then on the flip side, it's just, when the defense has stepped up like it did in the first half against Tennessee, the offense can't do anything, and the offense is having turnovers or can't find the end zone. So they hadn't really played a full, complete game until the last time out against Missouri. And even that, you look at, you're like, well, is that really a complete game, or is Missouri just terrible without Locke at quarterback? So I don't know.
What was so good in the first half of the Georgia game? I guess it's everything, but I mean, that was one where everybody kind of looked and went, oh my goodness. And I don't know that it's been quite like that since then.
Wait, sorry, say that again?
Yeah, the first half of the Georgia game, I'm assuming that's the best version of Alabama. What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, everything was clicking, right? You talk about that complete football. You had the defense making turnovers, the offense capitalizing on them. There were some red flags in the middle of that too. I mean, Georgia had a few deep balls that they could have connected on that, Carson Beck overthrew. But all in all, I mean, they were putting Carson Beck into tough situations. They were capitalizing on that. Jalen Milroe was, really explosive. He was making good decisions. He was running the ball really well. Everything that you've seen flashes of was all kind of culminating into one at that point. And so that is Alabama at its best. We only really saw it for 2 quarters, but it's out there, and I think that they can get back to that. It's just a matter of kind of capturing that lightning in a bottle and then, being able to use it time again.
I look at the box score, and I certainly didn't watch all of every game. I've got, obviously, obligations with LSU, but I look at the box score against Wisconsin and against Georgia, and those are obviously the 2 games where Alabama scored a lot of points against a Power 5 opponent, and Jalen Milroe ran a lot in those games for a lot of yards. And then I look at the box score against Vanderbilt and Tennessee, and he didn't. Why at times do they have trouble getting him going in the ground game?
Yeah, that was a good question. There's even, concerns or thoughts or speculations rather of him being hurt. He needs to kind of realize, and the thing that Kalen DeBoer says, he needs to realize what makes him good as a quarterback, and really instead of looking for that big play downfield, sometimes it's better just to take off and run. And maybe that's 5 yards, but those are 5 productive yards instead of, taking a sack or scrambling and, throwing the ball away. I think the thing that's bothered Jalen Milroe has been pressure. You really saw that in the Tennessee game. That's something that LSU's done really well. So that's what I would look for in this matchup is can LSU pressure Jalen Milroe into situations, and then, can you kind of bottle him up and then force him into some of those, passing situations where he doesn't under pressure that he doesn't excel in. And then, can you capitalize on that as well? Last year against LSU, the Tigers weren't able to bottle him up, and he just ran rampant. And that was kind of like the beginning of, Jalen Milroe's kind of breakout. He had a huge month in November, and it kind of all started with that game. It'll be interesting to see, if LSU is able to do a better job of that, and then I think that the environment too of Tiger Stadium, could add to some of the chaos. And if you can get that pressure on Jalen Milroe, it could kind of maybe add to the situation, maybe force him into a mistake.
Yeah, you've mentioned pressure a couple of times. Last year, we know Alabama allowed more sacks than anybody in the Southeastern Conference. This year, statistically, that looks better. Has it looked better to you on the field, the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, look, you've got Caden Proctor's been drastically improved. He was terrible as a true freshman. I think he led all Division I players in sacks allowed, or if not, he was at the bottom of the list. He's gotten worlds better. I mean, he is now a strength for Alabama. You've got Tyler Booker at the guard position. The center problems that they were having last year aren't there anymore. I think the problem that you circle, and the real reason why I can't just say that it's better, is that right tackle spot has been so inconsistent. You've got a 5-star guy in Elijah Pritchett who, can make some really great plays. He's a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, but even as a pass blocker, he can hold his own. But when he misses, man, sometimes he just totally whiffs on blocks, and then they lead to big plays. They lead to either big sacks or, you saw in the Vanderbilt game the fumble that Jalen Milroe had late. I mean, that was just on a play that Elijah Pritchett just whiffed on. And so Alabama can't have that. They're going to need a lot more consistency from him. You would think maybe with the open week that they're coming off of, maybe they can kind of fix some of that stuff and kind of, get back to the fundamentals. We'll have to see. I mean, the open week, a lot of times it does stuff, but it can only do so much. So, that's what you got to have to look for heading into this weekend. I would say it's improved, but there's still plenty of cracks in the armor, if you will.
Everybody talks about Ryan Williams, his age, his highlights, the whole deal. I think LSU fans are pretty familiar with him. What is another playmaker or two that Alabama absolutely needs to have a big day on Saturday?
I don't have to tell you about Jalen Milroe, but the Washington transfer, Jeremy Bernard, is the other receiver, the number 2 receiver, and he's been kind of coming on late. I think he could be a big guy, depending on if it rains, and maybe Alabama has to go more to the ground game. You saw Justice Haynes, the sophomore running back, he didn't get 100 yards, but he ran really well against Missouri, and I would almost call it a breakout game for him, even though the numbers might not totally suggest it. He had some great runs, and I think that might foreshadow some future success. So he's a guy I'd watch for, and then on defense, LT Overton, that's a guy that's, I think maybe even going to play his way up into a potential first-round pick. Alabama might not have a first-round pick, but he's one of the guys that's mentioned in that category now. And, obviously he'll be going up against Campbell and, some of the best tackles he'll be facing. So that's a matchup, too, that I want to watch. But, those are a few, I guess. I mean, I think a lot of the matchups on the line both ways are going to be vital in this one.
I had this written down to ask you, and you kind of alluded to it there. We know that Alabama over the last 20 years has been as talented a roster as there is in college football. You mentioned maybe they don't have a first-round pick. Do you think the talent level has dropped off a little bit on this team, specifically with the defense?
They're just super young, and they've got a lot of good but not great, star players at the moment. They got some really could Jahad Campbell could he maybe play his way up to early second? I mean, he's having a great season, but I don't know if he's, going to be the guy that's going to be a first round guy. You look at the positions that Alabama, that produce first round picks, and Alabama, Caden Proctor will probably be a first round pick if he continues to play like this, just because of his size and his talent. And, he's really made a jump, like I said, in the sophomore year, but he's not eligible at left tackle. Tyler Booker's having a good year at left guard, but like, are you going to draft a guard in the first round? That's not, some of those positions. I wouldn't say it's a drop in talent. I just think that they don't have an elite, stand-up edge rusher, the kind of guys like Will Anderson and Dallas Turner and, Chris Braswell and those guys that they have. They don't have that NFL type guy right now. I mean, LT Overton's a little bit different. He plays that bandit position, so a little bit heavier than that. He might be that guy, but they don't have those positions that you really look at. They're really young at cornerback. I think there's first-round talent on this team. It's just not developed into the point it was. I think with the transfer portal, you're going to start seeing that is you don't really have those guys that are the next wave. You might have to jump a wave. You might have to go from experienced NFL guy and then all your reserves left. So you're kind of going to inexperienced freshmen. And when they get good, then they'll probably even, you lose that middle tier of a roster now in the transfer portal. As something that I've noticed, not just with Alabama, but just everyone is kind of losing that second unit. I would say everyone's second unit is maybe not down in terms of, talent, because you're still recruiting a lot of big time kids, but in terms of like readiness, I think most teams, not just Alabama, are kind of lacking in that area from where they were from before.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think you're seeing that across the board, folks leaving when they don't have a chance to get to the field really, really quickly. So that's interesting. All right, Tony, we appreciate some time, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Tony Tsoukalas covers Alabama for Tide, illustrated part of the Rivals Network. That was interesting. It's evident to me in hearing him talk, and he certainly covers some day to day, that Alabama just has a good football team, and they don't have that absolute, that intimidating, dominating, rip you apart machine that they had for so long. They're just good, and there's a lot of good teams. LSU's a good team. Ole Miss is a good team. A&M's got a good team. Tennessee's got a good team. Like, there's a lot of good teams, and Bama's just one of the good teams. They absolutely could come into Tiger Stadium and win by 2 scores, but that doesn't change the fact that they have been in a dogfight almost every week in conference play. Dogfight with Vanderbilt, lost. Dogfight with Tennessee, lost. Dogfight with South Carolina. Dogfight with Georgia. Those teams some are good, some are not as good, but I mean, they're in a dogfight more often than not. It's just not quite the same as it was. And to hear him say, they probably don't have a first-round pick on the defense. I mean, that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened in 20 years. And so they may have one that's younger that hasn't quite emerged to that level yet, but it's a fascinating deal, and I think it's going to be an unbelievable football game on Saturday between a couple teams that are good. One of them will be in good position to make the college football playoff with work to do, and the other one is going to be on the outside looking in and maybe looking at the ReliaQuest Bowl or whatever the heck else happens in Florida on New Year's Day. That's Tony Tsoukalas. Appreciate him for giving us a little bit of time here on this Monday. SEC Power Rankings coming up in 15 minutes. Still a lot more to come on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Luxury. That's what you think of when you think of Genesis. But when you think luxury, don't necessarily think that you've already priced yourself out. That's not the case. Genesis is absolutely a luxury line of vehicles, but it's at a reasonable price. And some of the perks that come with driving a Genesis are just fantastic. How about a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty? 10 years. Unless you don't even drive cars for 10 years. 10 years, 100,000-mile warranty. How about valet maintenance? Got to get that oil change, but you don't think you have time? Just call Genesis Baton Rouge. They come, leave you a car, take your car into the dealership, handle the oil change, handle the air filter, handle the wiper blades, whatever else needs to be done. Bring it right on back to you. Complimentary valet maintenance for 3 years when you purchase a Genesis at Genesis of Baton Rouge. You're probably going to be on Airline Highway if you are looking to purchase a car. That's just where most of us end up in Baton Rouge. Just make one more stop. Genesis Baton Rouge, right there at PQ, across from Women's Hospital, and give them a look. Get behind the wheel of one of these Genesis, a fantastic model of vehicles. Genesis Baton Rouge, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
want to talk about a Sports Illustrated piece by Albert Breer about the Saints. Before I get to that, some good news. I just saw this on Twitter. WBRZ's weather Twitter account just tweeted a new projected track for Hurricane Rafael, which is a Category 3 hurricane down there south of Florida, south of Cuba as well. And the path looks really encouraging for us here in South Louisiana. Just one, as it results to us dealing with a hurricane, which you don't want to do. And two, this is a sports station. There's a pretty big football game on Saturday night. So if you look at this track, it says that Sunday at 6 in the morning, it's still going to be down in the Gulf south of Louisiana, significantly south of Louisiana, I would say. Cassie's got that picture pulled up for those that are watching on YouTube. And I have no way of knowing how big this hurricane is and how far the rain bands are going to swing out. But any indication that we might be right in the middle of a tropical storm at kickoff seem to be very far-fetched at this point. Every single metric that you look at, every single track that you look at has got this thing flattening out and continuing to head west that may avoid us altogether, which would be fantastic for us as one, and then for the football game as well. I don't really want to sit in the rain and watch the football game, so that looks to be really good news. Thanks for the folks at WBRZ for putting that up on their Twitter feed. All right, let's talk Saints. Sports Illustrated piece up. Marshawn Lattimore deal makes sense for Commanders and Saints. Albert Breer wrote it, and we hashed out the direction of the Saints franchise over the course of the hours that followed the trade. And you understand that I think it's the right thing to do. I think it was the right thing to fire Dennis Allen. I think it was the right thing to move on from Marshawn Lattimore. I think it's the right thing to recoup as many draft picks as you possibly can. All of that, to me, seemed like the right way to go, and something that we know the Saints have been very hesitant to do, and they have not done over the last 20 years. They have been, how do we make this team awesome right now for 2 decades? That's just the way they've done business. And so there are some that looked at this and said, well, they're probably just going to keep doing that. They're attached to Dennis Allen. They're attached to Mickey Loomis. They're attached to these salary cap issues. They're just going to keep going. And that just was not tenable. And it was evident to all of us on the outside. It was evidence to everybody in the fan base, and the fan base was really loud about it. I don't know if it was evident to Mickey Loomis or not. And in this piece by Albert Breer, he writes that he picked up a nugget digging around for the Saints information that the decision was driven by ownership, with Gayle Benson reaching a, quote, breaking point with the team's struggles. And as Breer writes here, Benson told Mickey Loomis, you will fire Dennis Allen on Monday. And he says that that was going to happen even if the Saints had beaten Carolina. He continues in this piece saying that Loomis did not want to pull the plug on Allen yet, but Benson and her group were hearing from the fan base in a way they had not heard from them before. Well, that's 2 things. One, good for Gayle Benson for stepping up and doing something she had not done. Keep in mind, Gayle Benson has never fired a coach that the Saints employed. And not so good on Mickey Loomis for feeling like they still needed to commit to things. I understand there's a really close relationship between Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen. They worked together for a very long time. Mickey Loomis inevitably gave Dennis Allen what will be his final chance to be a head coach. And there's a great relationship there, and that's a tough thing to do. But it was obvious that it needed to happen. And it sounds good to me that Gayle Benson knew that even if we beat this sorry Carolina team, the change needs to be made. And obviously, you lose to that sorry Carolina team, you got to make the change. And I'm disappointed to hear that Mickey Loomis didn't feel that that was necessary. Now, I doubt very seriously if Gayle Benson is telling Mickey Loomis to go get 4th and 5th round picks for Marshawn Lattimore. That's probably a bridge too far for her as far as the X and O's in football go and dealing with the roster assembly. That's Mickey Loomis. That's Dennis Lauscha. That's whoever the next head coach is going to be. And then to an extent, Kai Harley as well. So I think that he probably has gotten the memo that, hey, we're tearing this thing down. And I guess as I wrap this thing up full circle, it doesn't really matter how Mickey Loomis arrived at the determination. It just matters that he did. So as disappointed as I can be that he didn't understand that this is what needed to happen, allegedly, reportedly, it's a good thing that Gayle Benson walked down the hallway, knocked on the door and said, hey, Mick, this is it. We're done. And now you are in a situation where the Saints are going to move forward with rebuilding this roster, slow and steady, but rebuilding it. So we had a question, And now we have our answer. We had the question, how will Gayle Benson handle this? This is new under her leadership. We have never seen Gayle Benson respond to anything like this. And now we know, based on this report by Albert Breer, that she was comfortable going down there and making that determination, even if the Saints had won the game against the Panthers. So now it's time for Mickey Loomis to do something he has not done in 20 years. And that's completely retool this thing. He did it once. It was a long time ago. And he had what we can all determine was a stroke of pretty good fortune that Drew Brees got hurt, was dealt out of San Diego at the time, and then didn't pass his physical with Miami. That was the biggest in all of this. But now the Saints are going to be in a position where they've got to do something like that again. And I guess it doesn't matter how you arrive at that determination. It just matters that you arrive at that determination. This is very clearly a team in a locker room that completely fractured from Dennis Allen. You're now hearing stories that the locker room was aligned poorly based on some things that they did during COVID they never fixed. And now the position groups are together where they weren't previously. And that's not necessarily going to immediately mean they're going to score 7 more points on Sunday or allow 7 fewer points on Sunday. But it's just there are some things that were broken inside that culture. And some people love the word culture. Some people hate the word culture. But it's evident that the players didn't trust the coach. The coach wasn't getting to the players. The players weren't prepared and didn't have the proper environment to excel. And you've got to tear all that down. And I don't know how much of a positive impact that Rizzy can be in the locker room during his time as the interim, but he's going to try. And he's got the right demeanor for it. It's very Ed Ogeron-like in that way. It's a guy that wasn't necessarily a coordinator on offense or defense, but is a guy that has a good relationship with the players, is a guy that brings a lot of energy and passion every day, and is a guy that's going to put his foot pedal to the metal and do the best he can for this organization. Now, I'm looking at this if I'm a Saints fan, and I'm going, I kind of hope they lose the rest of their games. But you understand that they're going to play as hard as they can, and there are going to be plenty of Saints fans that want to watch their team win on Sunday. And we'll see if they can do that or not. But I'm thrilled that Gayle Benson did have the wherewithal to come down and put this thing into motion. And we're at the worst part of it now, the part where you're at the bottom of the mountain, but it's a slow and steady climb, and the Saints will now try to ascend that thanks to Gayle Benson and her assertiveness there. Disappointed Mickey didn't quite get it, but it is what it is. They'll start it now. All right, when we come back, SEC football power rankings. I told you at the top of the show, I don't feel that great about it, but we're going to get it done. Beck will probably yell at me, and we'll see how things are received. Bayou Ford Chat will probably have its thoughts as well. We'll do it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Neil and Melissa have been running Boudreaux's Electrical for 40 years. I just told you that hurricane down there in the Gulf, Raphael, may miss us, and that's good news. But you always know that next one is around the corner. That next season is around the corner. If you want to be prepared for next hurricane season, how about starting that process right now with the folks at Boudreaux's Electrical? Every single Generac generator that you get from Boudreaux's Electrical comes with a 7 to 10-year warranty. I generally talk to you, the homeowner, in this segment, but also if you're a commercial property owner, if you're a business owner that wants a generator to make sure that your power stays on when the storms blow through, Boudreaux's Electrical can handle your commercial orders as well. I'm never going to tell you about a VIP membership with Boudreaux's Electrical. You're not going to have to pay more to be treated properly. Now, they're just going to do that with all of their customers like they have for 40 years. Give them a call at 985-397-1562, 985-397-1562, or 225-393-89. That's the number in the Gonzales location. I'll tell you the easy way, BoudreauxElectrical.com, BoudreauxElectrical.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show with former Texas A&M Yell leader, Hunt Palmer. Giga Maggies.
So I was able to get out and vote yesterday after the show back, and I have this to say. This is as political as we'll get here on the Hunt Palmer Show. I often hear on election days, more so in presidential election years because those draw a bigger turnout, about these long lines where people standing there 2 hours and people handing out water bottles and the whole deal. I have voted in Baton Rouge in 4 elections, and I've never waited in line ever. Are we just a well-oiled machine? Is it just it's 2 different polling places. I don't understand. Do we not vote as much? Like, where are these hour-and-a-half long lines? I realize I don't live in Manhattan, but I don't have that problem ever.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it's like every election, everyone is fearful of these long lines and they early vote. And so the early voting lines are insanely long. And then on election day, there's not that many people that haven't already voted. So there's not that many people.
My wife went at lunch yesterday, in and out. Yeah. I went after work. I picked Myers up, so it was probably like 4:20 when I got there. It was in this gym.
Yep.
And there were like 8 polling booths, and I think there were 2 that were full. I just walked wherever I wanted. Here was a bit of a problem. I had not finished casting ballots, and Myers was in the booth with me, and he saw the yellow button, and he went to hammer it. And I was able to stop the hand briefly. We were gonna miss like 4 votes being cast there if he had hammered the button. He can't help himself with the button. There's a button; it's gonna get pressed. And we were able to stop him.
A funny voting story. Well, not a story, but from a show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I tell you to continue to tell you to watch.
I think it's funny. I just haven't gotten into it.
But there is a really funny scene where he's going to vote. And he talks to this guy in line behind him. And he's like, hey, who you voting for? And he's like, oh, I'm voting for so-and-so. He's like, oh, I'm going to vote for the other person. So we're just going to cancel each other out. So let's just leave. And he's like, oh, okay. And so they both look at each other and like smile and leave. And then, of course, the guy that Larry was going to vote for loses by 1 vote.
So I'm gonna tattletale a little bit. When I signed up, the guy who took my ID and signed and told me where to sign made a very partisan remark.
Really?
Which surprised me a little bit.
I think you're not supposed to do that.
I really think you're not supposed to do that. I didn't care. It wasn't like it was going to change my mind what was going on, but like it was odd to hear that from someone who was just taking names.
Yeah.
And there was a person sitting next to him, and I don't know if she approved. Like, it was a little bit of an awkward exchange.
Strange.
But it didn't change. But I wonder how many people he said that to over the course of the day. It's all right though. All good. Appreciate your service for volunteering on election day and getting things done. That's all politics for today. Let's do some SEC power rankings.
Hunt's SEC power rankings. The Georgia Bulldogs.
Let's start with the Georgia Bulldogs at the top. I still think they're the best team. I'm not as convicted as I had been because Carson Beck has thrown 8 interceptions in the last 3 games. Only 3 quarterbacks in America have thrown more interceptions than Carson Beck. And I've heard some NFL draft analysts that are watching this tape saying, this is bad, y'all. And, like, you can't throw the ball to the other team. LSU's dealing with it, too, and they're the 2 teams that throw the ball the most in the league. Ole Miss is right there with them, but, like, you got to stop turning it over. I still think Georgia's the best team, but we'll see.
The Texas Longhorns.
They lead the SEC in scoring defense, but Ewers has been a little mediocre since coming back from injury. He's been sacked 9 times in the last 2 weeks. That's a lot. There are some kind of warts everywhere, and we talked about this when we mentioned the SEC championship game back in the first hour, saying I'm not terrified of LSU playing necessarily anybody in that game. I think that Georgia and Texas are probably better than LSU. That's why I've got them higher up in the power rankings. But they're not world beaters at this point. I still got them at the top. That's Georgia and Texas top 2.
The Ole Miss Rebels.
I moved Ole Miss all the way up to 3. That's a 2-point raise this week. I think Jackson Dart's playing the best quarterback in the league. He's got 21 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. I also think that their pass rush, which leads the country in sacks, is absolutely legit. I could make a case Ole Miss is the best team in the SEC. I, once again, cannot explain to you what's going on with that Kentucky loss. It was awful, and I'm thrilled that LSU got it done at the end to beat Ole Miss. It's a tough loss for them, and it should stand up really strong for LSU. But Ole Miss is good. I've got them all the way up at number 3. Texas A&M! Is this wrong? It could be wrong. They got annihilated at South Carolina, but they also have looked pretty good. They've won 4 SEC games by double figures. They beat LSU soundly in the second half of that game. I still think their defense is very good. I still think they can run the ball, although the Le'Veon Moss injury does hurt. I'm not convicted here, but I feel like they showed me something in the second half against LSU. It's still burned in my brain, so I've got A&M at 4.
The LSU Tigers.
I think LSU is as defined as any team in the SEC with what they are and what they are not.
Besides Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt's very defined as well, but I think that LSU is really good throwing the ball, will turn it over there, doesn't run it great, but can on lesser teams. Their defense rushes the passer well, and is kind of limited in terms of its personnel. I think that LSU kind of is what they are most of the time. I think that's probably a good thing more often than not. They drop 1 spot to number 5, even after a bye week. That's because Ole Miss moved up. Give me the LSU Tigers at number 5.
The Alabama Crimson Tide.
Like, if Jalen Milroe runs the ball 18 times and doesn't throw interceptions, like, they could beat anybody in the league. They proved that. They beat Georgia, who I've got number 1 in my power rankings. But when he runs for 10 yards and their secondary gets torched, they're not that good. So it's Jekyll and Hyde in that way. I still think they're talented, not as talented as they have been. I still think Milroe is dangerous if flawed. I think Bama stays put there at number 6 right now.
The Tennessee Volunteers.
Maybe Tennessee's like the best or second best team in the league. I've got them at 7. That could be completely wrong. They're number 5 in the nation in scoring defense. No one has scored 20 points on Tennessee yet. No one has scored 20 points on them yet. That's pretty damn good. They're number 6 in the country in run defense. They're number 22 in the country in pass defense. And, you know, they hadn't been great on offense, but they do run the ball pretty well, and they got Samson going in some of their better wins. So I think Tennessee may be better than 7, but they have a loss. Whatever. They're 7.
The South Carolina Gamecocks.
There's no conviction in my voice. That's the problem. South Carolina moves up 1 spot after that great performance against Texas A&M. They are number 8 this week. They're 4th in the country in sacks. They're 11th in the country in tackles for loss. They're 2nd in the SEC in rushing attempts per game. That's what they want to do. Sellers was great against A&M. That doesn't mean he's great every week. They still had a clunker against Ole Miss, who I still think is very good. But they played some really impressive games, too. They beat the heck out of Oklahoma, beat the heck out of Texas A&M, beat the heck out of Kentucky. They're a good team. I'm curious to see what happens this week against Vanderbilt. But South Carolina checking in at number 8.
The Vanderbilt Commodores.
Doors at number 9. That's back a spot. I moved a couple
Even though they
teams
didn't
up
lose.
there. They did not lose, but I moved South Carolina up a spot because they were really, really impressive. So Vanderbilt, good. Pavia, good. Coaching, good. Talent, Got them at 9.
The Arkansas Razorbacks.
Arkansas only backs up 1 spot because I think the teams behind them are really, really flawed. They've had some good weeks. They look great against Mississippi State, but they just did not match up with Ole Miss. And that kind of is what Arkansas is. They're a good team against mediocre teams. They can't hang with the elite teams in the SEC. Problem with them, Texas is up next. I think that probably doesn't mean good news in Fayetteville. Haven't shown they can match up. We'll see if they can. They back up a spot to number 10.
The Florida Gators.
Florida's number 11. So they played better defense the last 4 weeks. Now comes Murderers Row. They got Texas next. They got LSU the following week and Ole Miss as well. They're at number 11, and that's in assuming that DJ Lagway comes back. If he doesn't, they've got to back up. I don't expect him back this week, but I didn't expect them to beat Texas anyway, so I don't really care about that. If Lagway's out for the rest of the year, then I'd have to back Florida up, but I'll put him at 11 for now.
The Vanderbilt
Kentucky
Commodores.
Wildcats.
None of those was right. Not Vanderbilt, not Kentucky either.
The Missouri Tigers.
That's what we're looking for. They were shut out by Alabama. They only scored 21 on offense, and that included a defensive score. So really, it was 14. They scored 10 on A&M. That's bad offense. I don't care if your quarterback's in the hospital and coming back. I don't care if Drew Pine's out there. I don't care if Luther Burden's out there. I don't care if Theo Weiss is out there. Their offense is bad. They're not scoring enough points, and that's why they're all the way down here at number 12, the Missouri Tigers.
The Kentucky Wildcats.
Kentucky's lost 4 straight, and basketball started on Monday, so that means Coach Stoops, we'll see you next Labor Day. That's what Kentucky fans are thinking. They want to watch basketball. They want to drink bourbon. They want to watch horses. They're not watching a football team that lose 4 games in a row. Kentucky's off the mat. They're at number 13.
The Oklahoma Sooners.
They got a get-right game against Maine this past weekend, but here's what's left. At Missouri, Alabama, and at LSU. Still bad on offense, even if you score a bunch on an FCS team. Defense, really not that great either. That's why I got Oklahoma down here at number 14.
The Auburn Tigers.
Number 14 in the SEC in scoring offense. And the turnover margin, you know, at this point, there are 134 teams in the FBS. Auburn ranks 127th. Only 7 teams in America have a worse turnover margin than Auburn. Huge problem, and it doesn't get fixed all that quickly. Auburn back at number 15. That's a 2-spot dip for them.
The Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Hey, I apologize to Mississippi State for putting it at the bottom. They were my only cover this week, so I've got respect for them in that way. They helped me out there on Saturday with the cover against, who did they play? UMass. Good cover there. You're still last. So that is my SEC power rankings. 1 Georgia, 2 Texas, 3 Ole Miss, 4 Texas A&M, 5 LSU, 6 Bama, 7 Tennessee. Number 8, South Carolina, bottom half of the league. Vanderbilt at 9, Arkansas at 10, Florida 11, Mizzou 12, Kentucky 13, Oklahoma 14, Auburn in second to last, and the basement dwellers, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Beck, how did I do?
I mean, it's for me. I really think Tennessee is a top 5 team in the SEC.
They probably are.
But
they're probably better than LSU and Alabama.
But it's hard, obviously, because they have the win over Alabama. But other than that, they don't really have a really outstanding win. Oklahoma is 15th, and they played them, but Oklahoma is clearly terrible. Other than that, they get the win over NC State, who is not very good either.
Who else have they beaten in the league? I don't even know who's played Tennessee to this point. They lost to Arkansas. I know that.
Florida and then Kentucky last week, obviously. So,
I mean, you're talking about teams that I've got ranked 13th and 11th.
So I understand why you could see them being 7, but
I guess we'll learn against Georgia.
We'll see.
We'll figure it out when they play Georgia.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's where the case may be. Is South Carolina better than 8th? South Carolina has beaten the brakes off of 3 SEC teams and played LSU and Alabama right to the
so
end.
I mean, if you look at their schedule, their losses are to LSU, Ole Miss, who beat them pretty soundly, and then Alabama by 2 points. And then other than that, they've won all their other games. So they've played
that
a really
defense
hard.
Is legit.
Yeah, they played a really hard schedule, and they lost 2 one-score games to LSU and Alabama. So,
who are you picking in South Carolina, Vanderbilt?
I'm going with the Dorson, of course. I mean, that's just not even a question. They got to go to Nashville. It's a very tough environment.
Well, it's
probably
a construction site.
Probably going to be more South Carolina fans in that game.
Definitely.
But, however,
but maybe they'll be wearing black, and you'll be able to tell.
Yeah, that's a good point.
See, that's got to encourage the Vanderbilt faithful.
Yeah.
When the other team is wearing the same color as you, and you can't quite tell that they've taken over your home stadium, which is a construction site.
Yes,
so
that's a good point.
That's what it is. Coach Lee, coach him up. All right, we'll close it out next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. EvolvePT.com is the website. You can go by and see him starring near Highland Road, right behind Sammy's Grill. If you're in pain, get on by Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. You get to choose where you get your rehabilitation. Doctor can suggest it, and that's fine. That's great. Most of the time, they suggest a great spot. Every once in a while, you go to a place that doesn't take care of you. They just hand you out a printout, says, here's some exercises, some stretches. Let's see how you're feeling next week. That's not rehabilitation. You go into Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports, they're going to start with one of their physical therapists, hands-on, soft tissue manipulation, cupping, dry needling, scraping. They got isokinetic testing they can do in there as well. Their goal is to get you back to being your active self, whether you're a 15-year-old high school athlete or whether you're a 65-year-old that's trying to get back on the golf course, got a bad hip. Either way, you need pain relief and get back to being your active self. Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports is where you need to be. Check them out online at EvolvePT.com. It's Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. EvolvePT.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Congratulations to Andy Antley from Youngsville. Andy is the Week 10 winner in our 2024 College Football Pick'em Contest and wins a Hooters wing party for 10 people. Don't forget to make your picks for round 11 by tomorrow, Thursday at noon. Weekly winners will receive a Hooters wing party for 10 people. And the first place season-long champion will receive a 75-inch 4K flat-screen TV and soundbar, plus free Hooters wings for an entire year. It's the 2024 College Football Pick'em presented by Hooters.
Reminder, LSU Hoops tonight versus ULM, 7 o'clock tip-off from the Pete Maravich Assembly Center. That means 6:30 pregame for Chris Blair and John Brady over on Eagle 98.1. I'll be in attendance. I'll have a story up at LouisianaSports.net this evening when the game goes final. So looking forward to getting to the PMAC tonight and watching year 3 of the Matt McMahon era get underway. We're hopeful it's going to end in an NCAA tournament appearance. They got to start tonight. And they got to do a better job this year early in the season they did last year, where, of course, they lost that game to Nichols, and they also just didn't do a good job in their high-profile non-conference game. So we'll see what LSU can do to get off to a better start tonight against ULM. All right, Beck, take it or leave it.
All right, first one here. Cubs legend Kyle Hendricks signed a one-year deal with the Angels a couple hours ago, ending his 11-year run with the Cubs. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. I'm happy for Kyle. The Cubs need to get some of those young guys up into the rotation. I will say this. Nobody cares that's listening, but I will say this. Kyle Hendricks is the most underrated pitcher of this generation, and I have no problem saying that.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody who doesn't follow baseball really, really closely even knows who he is, But what if I told you there was a pitcher in Major League Baseball who won an ERA title, outdueled in a big way Clayton Kershaw to win the pennant, outdueled Corey Kluber to win Game 7 of the World Series, and beat Steven Strasburg in a playoff start as well, and nobody even really knows who he is. I think if people were talking about that era of the Cubs that won the World Series, they immediately go to Jake Arrieta, who was brilliant, and they talk about John Lester, who was great too. But Kyle Hendricks was as effective of a pitcher as there was in the major leagues in terms of run prevention for like a 5-year stretch, and nobody knew who he was because he doesn't strike that many guys out, and he throws 88 miles an hour, and he went to Dartmouth and never talks. So like no one knows who he is, but he is absolutely a Cubs legend. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, good to see him. He goes back to the Angels. I think they drafted him out of high school. He's from California, so he gets to go home. So good for Kyle. And yeah, man, everything you said, I completely agree with. I remember watching that Game 7, and he just always showed up in the clutch moments. And
because his pulse is one beat per minute.
Yeah, he's just unshakable.
There's a Cubs fan that I follow on Twitter. You know that cartoon white dog that like always has like a long face and like waves the flag? There's a GIF, and every time Hendricks would pitch and do something well, it's like this mopey dog like waving a flag, because like Kyle Hendricks would get a huge strikeout with the bases loaded, and he just walks off the mound real slow. Like he never fist bumped or showed any emotion whatsoever. So he's a perfect guy to have out there with the National League on the line and the World Series on the line, because he just didn't care. And he was a tough matchup because, I mean, he's a dying breed. Like no one pitches like that anymore.
No, they don't.
No one throws 88 miles an hour and throws 50%
Everybody's trying to throw as hard as they can.
Yeah. Not my guy Kyle. Stud.
All right, next one here. Cleveland Browns general manager Andrew Berry was non-committal when asked today about Deshaun Watson standing with the team, saying, quote, "Really, our focus with Deshaun is first and foremost to make sure that he gets healthy from his Achilles injury. Everything else we'll deal with at a later moment. This is the worst signing in sports history. Take it or leave it."
You got to take it.
I'll take it.
His contract was fully guaranteed, which is absurd. No one does that. He's making $1 bajillion. He stunk and then got hurt, and he's a PR disaster.
He was also hurt last year. Like there's
just no upside here. It's all bad. Everything is bad. He's a bad player. He's a bad PR look. He's a bad contract. Everything is bad. Yeah, I can't think of one that's worse.
Yeah. All right, I got a couple LSU basketball ones here. LSU, they have 13 non-conference games coming up. The Tigers will go 10-3. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. I need to see it.
I looked at it. I looked at it. So
I know that. I mean, a road trip to Manhattan. They're going to be a big underdog next week. I don't know anything about Kansas State team other than that they don't have Cam Carter because he plays for LSU now. But they're generally pretty good, and I know that they won last night because I saw John Rothstein tweet "Clubber Tang," which I know means that Kansas State won a game. I have no idea who they played, how many they won by, or what. But they'll be an underdog next week for sure.
They got to play Florida State.
Yeah,
they got to go. They got to go to that tournament where they're going to play.
There's a Wisconsin in there.
Yeah,
somewhere.
UCF or Wisconsin, and then the game before that is.
I would love it. I would love it if they could get through non-conference with only 2 losses. Like I think that would really set them up.
Really,
but I mean that you gotta jump over all the landmines, which start tonight. Which I think they will. I don't have any reason to believe they're not going to win a game. They're a 22-point favorite in tonight, but they did lose to Nichols last year. You got to jump the landmines to start, and then you got to pick off 1 or 2 of these higher profile games. They've got to do that.
Yep. All right, last one here. LSU will make 15 threes tonight in the PMAC. Take it or leave it.
You figure they'll probably shoot 35, and they've got some good shooters. They should get some good looks. I'm going to take it. I think they're going to shoot a lot of threes, and I think they're going to shoot 3 as well. I think Sears is a legit three-point shooter. I think Carter's a legit three-point shooter. I think Jalen Reed can help them shooting threes. Mike Williams is a really good three-point shooter as well. I don't think Jai Bailey's going to shoot a lot of them, but I do. I think LSU will make close to 15 threes tonight. I don't think that'll be something they do most nights, but in an opener against ULM with that new offense that they're going to try to use and the pace that they'll play with, I do think they'll make 15 threes in the game tonight, and I'm hopeful they do. I think that's going to be part of their MO moving forward. Can't wait to get in there and watch them play a little bit tonight. Probably going to get a chicken tender basket, quite frankly. I got one for the exhibition. It was pretty good.
Oh, is that only on Tuesday? Or I saw they do like the 50% off.
Yeah, so those I don't know if I even got qualified for that. I don't remember what I paid for. It's one of those deals you just stick the card in.
Yeah,
I know that I'm not spending $100 on chicken fingers, so it's just like if it's 9, if it's 7, I'm not paying that much attention. But yeah, I think I'm gonna get one of those because we eat pretty healthy dinners during the week. Step out, grab a chicken dinner basket.
Get you a Myers meal there. He's a chicken guy.
Yeah, God, the guy just loves chicken fingers and French fries and ketchup. Just absolutely loves them. I think we got chicken parm for him in the fridge right now, so he'll be snacking on that this evening. All right, that's it for a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. If you missed any of it, you can always catch everything on demand wherever you find your podcast. Talked about Garrett Nussmeier being LSU's key on Saturday. JD Piquel of On3 Sports joined us. He likes the Tigers on Saturday. So what if Wednesday I previewed LSU basketball against ULM. Tony Tsoukalas talking Alabama football at the top of hour number 2. That's going to drive you home next on AFR. Back same time, same place tomorrow on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Make LeBear's Baton Rouge your game day headquarters this season. They've got the biggest screens around, and now you can bet and dine at ESPN Bet in person. If you haven't been to ESPN Bet, highly, highly recommend you go check it out there in LeBear Sportsbook. It is, it's fantastic. The screens are huge. They got a lot of games going at one time. They got comfortable chairs, blackjack tables. They got a great wait staff. They can get you drink specials and fantastic food as well. Great place to watch games, whether your team's playing or you just want to watch them all at one point. And I always invite you to sign up for the Cover 5 SEC contest. Compete with me every single week. I was terrible again last week. I keep picking teams that don't cover by like 30 points. That hurts you really bad in this Cover 5 contest. Put in the promo code LABRSEC24, and you can play against me. If you're not a member, get the Pin Play app today. LeBear's Baton Rouge is your live sports headquarters. Must be 21 years or older. If you've got a gambling problem, call 1-800-589-9966 for help.